somehow think that we have some individuality in us, something like an individual body, individual energy, and an individual mind. To the extent that we label ourselves, this is my body, my mind, etc., my personality. But is it true? And the more we go toward an avenue of truth, the more generalized it becomes, the more subtle it becomes, the more immense it becomes. To the extent that we take seriously now that the energy is one. Where is the boundary of my magnetic field and yours? We can't trace it. There's no visible boundary about it. And yet we know that there is a magnetic field that sits around me and in fact buzzes with every cell. There was a visitor we had yesterday, a very interesting person. He's here for a conference. He's presenting papers on epigenetics. So he's interested to talk to me and me to talk to him, because I don't think he knows many people in the wider world that know anything about epigenetics. I think he was surprised to know that I knew a little something about it. Epigenetics says that every thought you have, more or less, it says it like this. Every thought that you have will set up a vibration. It will make a chemical change in the body, and every cell of the body will react to that and create an overall modification. So there'll be something that is surrounding, like a network surrounding the DNA, and there it has the capacity to what we call histones to modify that. And when it modifies that, the modifications act like a switch on, switch off button for the DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, all working through the proteins. Not only does it change that behavior, but it changes the behavior for other generations. There was a man called Lamarck who had this idea that behavior is inherited. People scoffed at him. They laughed at him. They said, do you mean to say that if we chop off a mouse's tail, then his children and his children's children and so on and so forth will emerge tailless? And of course, that was a ridiculous thing. They didn't grasp what he was saying. Now, he had no real reason to say it. It's just from an instinct. It seems like that is a possible thing to do. So he had that theory. And it turns out epigenetics verifies this. We can therefore, by consciously modifying our behavior, we can modify the world around us, starting with the physical world or the physical body. And the yogic way of describing the body is not in these as a unit, but in various parts. Even if we study the physical body itself, we'll find many parts are available to us, not only the physical as we see it from the outside, but there's a dermological layer, and the dermological layer, otherwise called the skin, has many other sublayers. Same thing with the mind. The mind has various levels, and you mentioned the subconscious. Now, the subconscious is not necessarily inferior. It's not inferior. It's not superior. And there's no way of putting it in that kind of ranking order just because we say sub. It just means it seems to be underlying a conscious mind. The conscious mind itself is something that, in comparison to the unconscious or subconscious, we can use these two terms synonymously. The conscious mind is proportionately very small. Think about it now. At the moment, your food is getting digested, your heart is pumping, blood is circulating, cells are getting renewed, nutrition is being delivered to every cell of the body, some 50, 60 trillion cells are there, and waste products are being taken away. And we have no idea about it. We just sit here and allow the machinery to carry on by itself, as if this machinery had some kind of its own intelligence. But we know that's not true, because it's just made from yesterday's pasta and tomatoes, or whatever we ate, bananas and porridge. So what is that special life thing within a human, and in fact within every living being, which acts as a kind of activator and sustainer, makes a repair job? This we call the Lord. This we call Bhagavad. This we call the inner entity. The one who digests our food we call Vaishvanara. But it is all the Lord of the universe who does it. And so that important passage, which I often quote, is there in Katha Upanishad. And we had a repetition of it in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And that is about a city. This, the unborn, that one which is unwavering, unchanging, his consciousness is unflickering, sits there in a city of 11 gates, 11-gated city, with a royal entrance and exit at the top, and an entrance here where the navel is, where all the vital organs of the body are and keep sustained, and with 7 in the head, and one exit for evacuation and one exit for procreation. This is the city that is designed for some entity. Something with parts is not for its own good. Same thing with the psyche. So we have a good geography of the mind, described already by the Samkhya philosophy. And that's adopted everywhere, no matter what philosophy you have or what is your final conclusion in philosophy. The mapping out is the same. The sense organs are themselves deemed to be part of the mind. If we take the mind to be some kind of internal instrument, the body is an external instrument, mind is an internal instrument. But if you have an instrument, it must belong to some entity that has the capacity to use it. So are we in full direct control of the subconscious or unconscious mind? No. We can never be in direct control over it. What area, therefore, are we in control of? We're in control of the conscious mind, and having gotten impressions in that area, all those impressions enter into a subconscious layer and sit there as a kind of memory. It's fair to say that what we call subconscious is memory. Some of it we can recall at will, and some of it so deeply enters into the overall unit that it acts as an instinctive operation, something that is an involuntary thing. Not all actions are voluntary actions. Most of the physical operations are involuntary. Now, in the realm of the psyche, involuntary thoughts come up. Thoughts that were originally deposited in a bank that we call the unconscious mind comes up. But is it our mind? That's a good question. Is it our body, or is the body part of a universal thing that we call matter? A structure made from various atoms and subatomic particles, ultimately quantum fields. Is this what is our body? We think of it in an individual way. We give it an individual layering. We use it and identify it for passport purposes. But essentially, when you look at it in a broad context, it is just a localized version of a universal phenomena that we call matter. Same thing with energy, and we know that matter itself is energy. The first time we made an explosion of an atom bomb, we realized that the atom is not the smallest particle. When we explode it, we find there's a radiation beyond it. And radiation is something that we can't see, but we can find out the effects. So something more subtle, some wave-like thing is there that when we explode completely the atom and push the nucleus apart, something is there. Now, we knew that from long ago when the atom bomb was first exploded. And so what looks to be a human body, what looks to be something that is cognizable as an individual, is really, when you look at it from a different point of view and shift your perspective, broaden your perspective to a more universal understanding, you'll see it's not there as we thought it was. As we thought it was is necessary in order to play out life's game and act out the drama, play your part well. And when misery comes, to enact sorrow, and when joy comes, to enact joy. Nothing more than God's play. Lila Maya. But we don't recognize it like that. It requires training to recognize it like that. Same thing with the mind. universal mass, universal energy? Is there also universal mind? And the Sankhya philosophy will tell us yes. There are so many categories that we can explore and identify within the life, but it all comes from one central universal mind. Now, when somebody like Krishna or Jesus says something to the effect that I am the Supreme, I am the way, sometimes interpreted in an exclusivist way, I am the way, the only way, you can have no other way. Every other way must be smashed. This is the only way. I'm not sure if it's fair to put those words into Jesus' mouth or put that interpretation there. Actually, I am sure it is not fair. See, so what is this way? What is this Jesus or this Krishna or this Buddha or this Ramakrishna? What are they saying when they identify themselves as the Supreme? They surely identify themselves with the personal God that we call cosmic mind. Cosmic mind, which your seemingly individual minds are just branch offices. So when we talk about the unconscious or subconscious, we are really talking about God's underlying memory level. And when we talk about the conscious mind, we are really talking about the level where the cosmic mind brings up thought and a thought current so that we, with a sense of individuality, can direct it here, direct it there. Meditation is a system where we decide, we take this thought current, this flow of thoughts, and direct them in a useful way. We can leave them and not attend to them, but anything not attended to will create its own problems. A house not attended to, not occupied, will be occupied ultimately with mosquitoes and spiders and bugs of all kinds. They will occupy it. Seeing the vacancy, they'll say, let us occupy it. Rent-free. Same thing with the mind. When we leave the mind free or blank and don't attend to what is going on there, it's a replay of all the impressions that are there, not necessarily in this life, but accumulation of all past memories from previous lives also. And that comes in, and that area is what we call the unconscious mind, containing all these various samskaras, impressions, along with great cravings called vasanas. All that sits there. And whenever there's a clue from the outside, some kind of stimulus, some kind of word association is there that brings up similar thoughts or similar chains of thoughts. And there's a whole reverie of thoughts that come and go before we know it, before we catch, what was I thinking? Let's step aside. What was I thinking? Some seconds went by, something was, yes. And then we're able to remember. I was thinking this and this and this and this. Was it very useful? I don't know. Now we can judge the usefulness of it. And if we determine that it wasn't useful and wasn't directed in a higher way, we can then take the opportunity of the next second, the next second, the next second, and put something consciously in. And as soon as we put something consciously in there, again, we can't avoid making its carbon copy and sending it to the subconscious level. In that area, we can call it the habit level, we're building up a whole atmosphere, a whole library, if you like, of stored memories and impressions, available once more for replay, and the overwhelming theme within it will determine our behavior. It will be to determine our behavior, it will determine our character, it will determine our personality, it will determine our relationship with the world, it will determine how we act, how we react. So be careful what you think. The thought current being available, a mechanism there being able to facilitate any thought you want, and coming from a cosmic mind as a supreme thinker, making the resolve and intention, it carries out infallibly and condenses as this world of ours in front. Don't complain what you have today. You ordered it by the universal cosmic eBay. and it arrived today. You made an order and DHL delivered it at your door today. You can't say, oh, I don't want that. I didn't order it. You did order it, and at the time you ordered it, you obviously wanted it. But there's some things that we don't want. Things that we regret, that also gets delivered to your door. But this thought current is a streaming current that's always flowing. It never stops. And it comes out, of course, when we vacate this personality every night and enter into a kind of witnessing mode where the dreamer and the dreamer become one, and we enact a play or we observe a play comprised of all these other impressions that we have from the conscious waking working world. And they have their play. So that what we call dream is mainly the unconscious mind playing its part. So we can see some layers. Do we end it there? That is the area of cosmic mind. But there's an area that precedes cosmic mind. Something that, will you just stop a minute? Yeah, I think something, or unless it was from here.
I think it was
It wasn't the